So let's come to the human nature. We ask ourselves those questions, and we need to trace it back. Is it a thought or not? And what can the thought do or not do? So we already saw this in our last presentation, and now we are looking to the body because the body is visible. We can take it apart and see all the organs, and we know that all the organs are connected to the cortex. Any organ that is not connected to the cortex, well, we cannot say no, because that's anatomy. We can prove it, we look to it, and we see how the wires go into the whole human being. And we need to know that all must work in a circle. So if everything is connected to the cortex, where does the power come in? Where does the thing needs to start? In the liver or in the heart, or where does this need to start? It must start in the cortex. Yeah. So that's why we need to know who starts, who makes the power in the cortex, because the life power must come through the cortex into the body. Yeah? So let's see, the brain consists of two hemispheres, and they are not connected. They intervine, so to say, down after the limbic system, but when you cut through the brain in the middle, the hemispheres are not cut through. You may cut through the corpus callosum, but you don't cut through the brain to the cortex, where the nerves are and where the starting point of the nervous cell is. So those are separated, and it's obvious, I say so, since we come from mother and father, that we inherit one from mother and one from father, because we're 50-50. That's the law of inheritance. No one can change that. If Adam also had two brain sides, I don't know, but we will ask him later. But we right now know that we have two brains, right side and left side, and they must come according to the law of inheritance, half chromosome from mother, half chromosome from father. It's 50-50, not 1% more or less. What comes into, how can I say, the phenotype, what comes out might be different. Yeah, we can look more like father or more like mother, but from the basic, it's all the same. Yeah, so the anatomy is one-to-one. So that's why, since all the nerves are in the cortex and the wires go into the body, we know that in the cortex the whole body is put together. There is nothing in our body that is not conducted and coordinated and given power than by the cortex. Yeah? So that's most important to understand. And then the power goes through the nerve, and it, in the limbic system, in the center of the brain, there is chemistry that is released. So there are only two elements by which physiologically we function. The first is the electrical impulse that starts in the cortex. That's the power that runs through the nerve. In the limbic system, it releases and puts to action chemistry, which then comes back to the cortex, the first reaction as what we feel as emotions. But of course, they go down as well into the body. What was discovered just a few years ago was also something that the anatomists discovered, that there is a direct physical connection between the brain and the bone marrow. So everything that starts in the brain also goes automatically into the bone marrow. And if you know a little bit what happens in the bone marrow, what is made in the bone marrow, that's the blood, and the blood is feeding how much of your body? How much important is the blood? Yeah, so that's why the bone marrow finds a lot of attention with Solomon and in his approaching of the human being and of disease. So everything starts with an electrical impulse, and that electrical impulse then generates a chemistry release or production, because most chemistries are produced on demand. Yes, so your insulin or your dopamine or your adrenaline is produced and released on demand. Yes, your thyroid hormone, there is no demand, no production. Okay? So that's why we need to know the demand comes and is supplied by the power that comes from the brain. So where do the thought fit in this whole process? Because what we can measure in the brain are electrical impulses, and we can measure the chemistry that happens all over through the body, but where do thoughts fit in this whole process? And that's important to know, I think. So let's look very simple from a law perspective to what is the brain able to do. Can it produce its own fuel? Yes or no? No. So what is then what it needs? We all know that it needs chemistry. It needs oxygen, water, carbohydrates. And where does it take them from? Well, it's from food, from nature. Yes? So that's sustaining the power of the function of the brain. By what does the brain functions more? Or what gives the brain the power? It is that what we said before, the electrical impulses. How many of these impulses can the brain make itself? How many? None. Yes? The brain cannot generate its own electrical impulses because the law does not permit it. So we need to find out who makes the impulse, because he who makes the impulse gives the power to the brain and to the function of the body. Yes, it's like who makes the light to shine? It's the electricity. It needs power. Of course, there are more elements, but without electricity, how much can they function? Nothing. So, understanding that the power of the brain comes outside of the brain, we need to know who gives him the electrical impulse by which he puts everything into function. When is a person dead? When there is no electrical impulse, when you can measure no electricity anymore, no function there might still be electricity, but there is no impulse. Because when the impulse is gone, the life is gone. So the most important then is to find out who makes the impulse. Is it? In the so-called science, it is believed that the electrical impulse happens accidentally in between the synapses, and by this electrical impulse, also the thought is generated. So you must know that there are only two ways of deceiving things. It's mixing cause and effect. Yes, changing the order. That's why the law is so important, to know what is first. And if you don't know what is first, the only way to be mixed is to make out of an effect the cause, or of a cause an effect. And then you are mixed up. Yeah? So, by law, the brain cannot make its own impulse, whatever science says. thoughts cannot be generated by the brain. Why not? Why can the thought not be generated by the brain? Because the brain can not make its own power, because the brain cannot produce a spiritual element. If the thought makes something to the brain, then the brain cannot make something to the thought. So, but in science we believe the thought comes out of the brain, and if the thought comes out of the brain, he cannot injure the body. How can he injure the body if he comes from the brain? So if our thinking is wrong because of our brain, what do we need to change? The brain. Yes, so then the brain needs to be cut away. But the thoughts, and as we are Christians, we know that repentance is not changing the brain, or is it? Because if the brain generates thinking, then the brain needs to be changed first in order to think correctly. So if that is so, then we all need brain surgery. But there is no such thing as a brain surgery. I mean, we can do it. I was assisting the surgeon when my grandmother, she had a bleeding in the brain from the circulus villosi. She got a little aneurysma there on her right side of the brain side, and she got the bleeding in the brain, and it stopped. And the surgeon, I was a medical student back then, they suggested that we should do a clip on that aneurysm so that it should not bleed again, because you know they always say it's like the same in the nose, but when it's bleeding in the brain, it cannot flow away from the nose. That goes away. And so I agreed. I even helped my grandmother to sign the papers. I wouldn't do it today again, but she did it, and I was assisting at the surgery. It's a nice thing to just put the things aside and go into the middle, the center there, and clip that vessel, and was beautiful. I still remember it. But what happened with my grandmother? First of all, she didn't wake up for 4 weeks. Yeah, she was in coma. Her blood sugar was over 1,000. Yeah, without eating nothing. Yeah, so they put a lot of insulin in her. After 4 weeks, she opened her eyes again, and she was awake, but she was not living anymore in this age. She was living somewhere in the past where she had her swine and her hens, and you need to take care of them. It was amazing when she was in the room with the colleague of her room. She explained to her, yes, I have 2 swines at home, and we need to put that there. And really? Here in the city, And she was very serious. And then when she was home, suddenly she says to my brother, go shut the door at the hen's cottage, because they are in danger. So she woke up later. So it's not good to what do? Yes, do on the brain something, because the brain, yes, he stores there the memory. We need him in order to think, but the brain does not think. And that's something that we need to differentiate. Yeah. So who makes the electrical impulse? That is the one that governs the brain, and that electrical impulse cannot come from the brain. So that's the first thing. We need to find who does it. The second thing that we need to know, that we are more than a brain, is we need freedom, security, curiosity, understanding, orientation, harmony, faithfulness, confirmation, reward, righteousness, truth, morals, joy, and so on. I never made a whole list of all the spiritual needs that a human has. And the question is, how much does the brain understand of freedom? Does any understanding of freedom have? Can we open a cell and say, oh, this nervous cell, if it doesn't have freedom, it doesn't work anymore? Can that be? There is no such thing. Are cells curious? Do they know what is righteousness? Do they know what is a reward? Is that something the brain can understand? So all those things are spiritual things, and the brain is a physical element. And since it's a physical element, it cannot understand the spiritual part. That's why there must be a human spirit, and unfortunately it is not well seen in this. It is here around us, the human spirit, but it doesn't matter. The spirit is invisible, however. So by the human spirit can only process those things and know what is security, what is confirmation, and by processing information, he comes to decision, and the decision makes the electrical impulses. So it's the human spirit who brings in, through the processing of the information, the power to the brain. And that power then is given to the whole body. If you are tired, where is your tiredness come to exist? In your liver? Yes or no? No, where is it? In your brain. Pardon? What is that? Yeah, the hormones are generated by whom? Hormones are generated in the limbic system and down there at the order of the electrical impulses that come from the spirit who makes them. Yeah, so everything must go into that one direction. Hormones are an effect. They are not a cause because they are generated. I was not long ago called to make a home visit at a patient, and I do home visits because when people cannot walk, when I go home and clean their ear or whatever they have. And I was expecting, like always, to find an old lady that is 90-something and needs to hear again. But I come into a house, a young man opens the door, invites me in, I go through the long hall, and then we go into a room which is dark, and he opens up the light, and here in bed lies a woman, 42 years old, flat in the bed. And the first reaction when I see her, I wonder, I said, why do you lay in bed? Do you have multiple sclerosis, or what happened? And then she tells me, or the husband tells me that, well, he is she's in bed for 2 years now because she has no power anymore. She ran out of power. So she has a fatigue syndrome, that's how it's called. So who makes that, who takes that power away from her brain? Who takes that power away? Can only be her. But is she aware of that? No, she lies in the bed for 2 years. She has 2 little children, about 3 and 5 or 6 years old. The grandmother I saw the second time I went to her. And I said to her, if you would understand what makes you sick, you could stand up in 3 days. It's easy to say, is it? But that's just how simple it is. But she must understand it in order to change it. So I cleaned her right ear because that was blocked, because on the left ear, she does not hear since she's 7 years old. That is an injury that just happened at the age of 7 years. Now you know the left ear, you know one ear is injured, not by external factors, yes, but she just lost a part of the hearing there. And then you have one puzzle more. to understand why she got the fatigue syndrome. Now, of course, it came together when she gave herself that thing that all people were obliged to give. And now you can say, oh, it's the injection. Well, if it's the injection, then how much can you do? How much? Nothing can you do. Yeah, you can do all kinds of taking the detoxification, yes, but then you are the victim of that. But that's not the case. And so I gave her husband my internet presentations and said if he wants to watch, if she wants me to come to her, to talk to her, I'm willing to come to talk to her, to explain to her how things work. Because I said she's a young woman, she can get well. I met a few cases with fatigue syndrome. The patients are very, very difficult, so to say, because their idea of being a victim of the others is so strong. As strong is the inability of moving or being so tired. So it's not a conscious process, but if they cannot make it conscious, and now there is another handicap, she cannot concentrate except for 5 minutes. How much can you explain is 5 minutes? And I was visiting her, and she could only be paying attention for a few minutes, and she said, stop it, I have to now concentrate a little bit and get some relaxation. And then she says, okay, now you can say more, but you cannot say much there. Yeah? And then I said I will come to her every time she wants me and explain it step by step. But then she got a place to move out, I don't know which, so that she gets fixed there, and since then I didn't hear from her. But it's very hard for the people to understand that the power of the brain is made by our own way to think. And it can even give you power or destroy yourself. So it can be the right way or the wrong way. Now, if I move my hands through my thoughts, then my thoughts are the power for me moving the hands. Are you understanding that? And the food that we eat sustains and makes that function possible. It's like the engine of a motor. You need to bring that motor into starting, and you must have also the fuel. But the fuel does not start the motor. It just keeps him going. And you stop the motor when you push and stop the electrical circuit. And you stop that function. So, if this is the way, and it's the only way to understand the human being, that he himself, by functioning, by processing the information. Now, the information doesn't come from him. The thought itself has no power. It's the information in the thought that is the power. You may remember the case of Jesus at Bethesda. There was the man laying there for 38 years. No power to raise up. His bones were damaged. And Jesus asked him, do you want to be healed? And the man says, I have no help to bring me and help me. And Jesus didn't say, I help you. Jesus said to him, raise up, take thy bed and walk. Now, what could the man say? I'm 38 years lying here, how can you tell me that? No? But he took those words by faith, and the moment he took the words, what happened? He worked by what? By the power that was in the words that he believed, and through believing it, he took them in, and that gave the whole body power and healed him. So that's why Jesus, when he was tempted, the devil said to him, you will die if you don't eat. What did Jesus say? No, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from God. So the understanding that our life is dependent on information. That's the word. And it must be the word of God, the information that, then we understand that life is not in the physical, but in the spiritual. That's why Jesus said, manna, all that ate the manna has died in the desert. But if they eat Him as the manna that is really from heaven, they will never die. Could they understand it? No, they left Him because God gave the Israelites 40 years manna for one reason. What was the reason why He gave them the manna? The one reason was to teach them that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Did they understand it? Can we understand it? No, because we are not aware that we live by the information we take in our mind, and that then gives to the body the power, or takes the power away, or destroys it. So if that is so as a structure, to whom do we need to pay attention to when it comes for our life and for everything we do? What kind of information we possess? And if you remember my last 1 year ago, I shared how many people are addicted to the social media. Why is social media so attractive? Why? I was fantastic. I was in Singapore, and I just went out to the city, and how many people I met with their phones in their hands. It's such an amazing thing. I had my phone as well in the hand because I had the map there to know where to go, but in the trains, yes, in the subway, the train. How many people are on the phone? Now, there are a few exceptions. There are two people who love each other. They have no phones. Yeah, they just cuddle, and and I like to observe. I see everything, but the most people, they're not cuddling in the train, and they just are on the phone. And everyone scrolls, the one scrolls, the other, and the trains are quite full, and you can see, this one watches this one watches that, and this one watches that. It's just amazing, to how much information you can get just by looking what's in the phone of the other one. Yeah, and then imagine, then in Singapore everything is under cameras, so you're just like glass, So everything is registered there. You might look to your phone and they catch it on the camera what you look to. And so it's social media. It's the information that takes us in interest, because we live by information. We don't live by bread and water. That's just what sustains us, but that's not what we live from. Life is in our minds. That's why it is the power to the body, or it is the destroying power to the body. That's why it comes first, and the brain comes second. And that's a clear structural function. There is one more that I want to tell. There are more proofs that I bring also in my booklet, but you need to take just the one with the law will make us clear that the brain cannot produce its own impulses. Then the brain is not God, but since science believes that the brain can produce its own impulses, we might think that that is true, but it cannot, because the law does not permit it. So there are two parts in the human being. The one that is that you can govern, and the other one you cannot govern. So the spirit cannot be controlled from outside. Now, yes, he is dependent on the spirit, on the brain that because he can only work together. But the control of a spirit is just from within himself. That's why it's the nightmare of the parents that the children do not do what the parents says to them to do, is it? They would like the children to be like little robots, would it be? Yeah? But they have a spirit that they govern themselves from the inside. So that's why we govern ourselves from the inside, and since we will see why mothers want to rule the child and the child wants to rule the mother, that's why the conflicts are so strong in between mother and child, because everyone wants to put himself over the others. And that's not possible. So the spirit is always active, the body cannot oppose its thoughts. Whatever you think, if you get a panic attack or whatever, it immediately will show up in the brain and then in your whole body. So it starts in the spirit, who gives the power, and it comes back from the body to the spirit, because the whole system needs to work in a circle. And now they can only work together. There is no way of separation. The moment they separate, the human being is dead. So if we would think, or if the brain would think, then we could, physically do something to him that we may obey. But people can be made pain, can be tortured, and they still can keep their will and say, I never do that. That's a proof. Physical elements you can destroy, you can pressure, but the spirit is an agent that you cannot do that with him. If he does not want, you can do whatever you want, he won't do it. So that's another element like the physical one. The physical one can be damaged. That's why Jesus said, don't fear the people that can damage your body, because they cannot take away your life from you, because that is hid in God. So understanding that, we understand that the one that coordinates the human being is the spirit that through the electrical impulses puts everything into function. From there comes the power. So to exemplify that is each part of the body serves the overall well-being of the being under the guidance of the spirit, because everything needs to function selflessly for each other. Yeah, only that way function is guaranteed. So we have here the stomach, and we want to know, when we now later eat or drink something, we put in the chemistry into that stomach, do we? And the question is, who makes the digestion? Who makes the digestion? It cannot be made by what you eat. And your stomach cannot digest anything without having what? Power. Power. And that comes by the thoughts, and if there's loving thoughts, your digestion will be very perfect. Yeah? You will have never an ulcer if thoughts are free thoughts and loving thoughts. Because digestion is made by the way we think. If we have heart issues, high blood pressure, who makes the high blood pressure? Who makes the whole metabolism? I just tell you, my wife, when her mother died a year and something ago, her high blood pressure went very high, and she took 12 kilos in 1 year. Why? Who makes that? How does it happen? And I know, my wife is an example. you can live with 220 to 130 blood pressure and you're still okay. I mean, when the doctor measures it, they get their own hypertension and they panic. But she just takes some, I am relaxed now when she measures her blood pressure in the morning and the evening. She does it. I lay in bed. I never measure mine. I'm just sometimes tempted. I said, okay, put it to me because I don't think that works well. Because when it goes over 220, I said, cannot be the truth. So measure with me. So it measures with me and I'm 110 or something. And then she measures again. And so who makes that? Now you can give some medication, but it lasts how long? And there are cases in which you give any medication and the blood pressure doesn't go down. Because we fight against the one that does it by the thoughts. And you fight against the thought for nothing because you will lose the battle when you fight with chemistry against that which is spiritual. It will just not work. It won't work. So, if you have kidney stones or urinary tract infections, there's so many people that have that recurrent, and I take then their medication. But why do they have it? Where does it come from? Who governs the function of your urinary bladder or your kidneys? Why do you have kidney stone in one side and in the other side is all right? How does that work? If we don't understand it, it's all governed from one side or the other side of the brain. Yes, so the left side is from the right side of the brain, of the kidney, and this one is on the other side. So if we know anatomy, we will be very nice and understanding and physiology. When we have bone marrow issues, the platelets of the things are not working well. I just spoke not long ago with a mother who has a child its platelets are not well. The thrombocytes, she has a thrombocytopenia, yes, low thrombocytes. And so when she injures a little bit, she has bleeding all over. And now where does that come from? Who makes it? If you don't know that function is made and of the bone marrow by what we think, then you can never govern that. Yeah, you can never bring that into balance. Then you have liver, who makes the cirrhosis, who makes the hepatitis. I got hepatitis B 1 week after my parents separated, by accident or by intention. So who makes those things when it does not come from here in our lives? And then of course vision issues. Everything in our body in the end is and must be governed from the Spirit, and the power of life must come in through the Spirit. The Spirit is not the generation of the power, but He uses the power that is in the Word of God, like the body uses the power that is in your bananas or in the things that are there in nature. So we need to know we need two elements. We need chemistry as well as the Word. And what is the fuel of life, what comes first, is always the information. So coming to put the structure together, we need the term soul to define the soul. We have seen that we have a body and a spirit. And what is the soul? And I compare it with the piano and the piano player. So if we put together the piano and the piano player, what does that bring for a result? That's the music. So what is the soul? The soul is a combination of the spirit and the body. Yeah, so it's not a new element or it's not a separate element from them, but the two together make the soul. Now, there are a lot of theories about the human nature, or anthropology, how it's called, and I guess give you three options here. The one is that we have a body, a spirit, and a soul. So that's the idea of a trichotomy thing, in which the soul and the spirit are spiritual elements. That's why they are put together. So the soul includes the spirit, but does not define it. That's a Platonic and Aristotelian view of the human being. We are believed that we are composed of a physical element and a spiritual one, and that's why we are soul and body. Plato had this belief that we are a god that caught himself in an animal body, and that's why we are humans. And when we die, then the soul is set free, and we are again gods like we were before. And that's the theory. Most Christians, most religions have that idea that we have three parts, and when you think on the soul, do you think on the body or just on the spirit? You just be spiritual. But the soul is something that is physical and spiritual. It's not a physical, it's not a spiritual thing. My body is part of my soul. Yeah? So I'm a soul. I have a body and a spirit, but I'm a soul. And then, of course, there are the Stoic and the Epicureans. They are on the other side of the thing. They say we are only one element. We are only physical, and the burning of the carbohydrate generates love. That's why we have love and emotions. They were living also in the time of Paul. They were having their ideas in Athens when he speaks to them as well. So it's like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You know, they had also debate. What were they debating of? The human nature. The politics as well, but they were debating about the human nature. The spirit. The Pharisee says the human has spirit, and the Sadducee says the human has no spirit. Yeah, and the one believed in resurrection, the other did not believe in resurrection. So you see, the human nature was a battle in the times over there, because it's a very important thing. And if you have it wrong here, then you have never a clear standard how to act on understand humanity. According to the law, there are two elements, the body and the spirit, and they give the soul. This is the lawful and the biblical understanding of the human structure, because God took two elements, so they cannot become three elements. Yeah, He took two elements, and they became one living soul. But the elements did not mix each other. They just transformed, and they work together, but they are still the same elements that are there. So, putting together the human structure as an overview, we have a cortex, we have a brain, that is the body all together. It needs chemistry and electrical current or electrical impulses. Those are the needs of the body. And then we have the spirit. He needs love, freedom, faithfulness, justice, and so on, which are spiritual elements. And if he is fed correctly, his decisions lead to the right electrical impulse, and then the body functions correctly. What is the soul and where is the soul? The soul is the connection between the spirit and the cortex. Everything that is beyond the cortex is body, this is soul, and this is just spirit. So that's how it is put together, because only where the connection between the two are is life. It's like the cockpit. The pilot sits in the cockpit where he has all the buttons, and he pushes the buttons according to, and they function. So everything we experience in the soul. So our life is just in our head here. It's not in the toes, it's not in the arms. Everything we experience is just in this area. Yeah? So we see the eye, they are in the body, they are connected to the cortex. And who sees what you see? Who sees it? Does the brain see anything? Does the eye see anything? Of course not. The only one who sees is the Spirit. Why can only the Spirit see? Because only he who has a choice needs to see. Because he can choose to see it or not see it. Open the eyes or not open, or turn them or not turn them. It depends on the one who has a choice. Who has no choice does not need to see. Okay? That's why the Spirit has a choice to see, oh, I like this or I don't like it. That's why only he has the ability. The eye leads the thing to the cortex, and that leading is an electrical current, it's a wave that is there, comes in, and he just makes out of that a picture. How that functions, who will know it? Then the ear, who hears? The Spirit hears because he can open his ears, so I'm told to say, listen to or not listen to. Yes, so many people come, the parents with their children, and say, I want to check if my child hears well. I say, he hears very well. Yeah, but he's just not listening. Yeah, his hearing is not injured, but since he does not want to hear, or he has his own occupation, then no matter what you say, it still gets to him, but he won't listen, because the Spirit has a choice to listen or not to listen. Yeah, and if my wife asks me something, then she starts very nicely, says, can you please do this? And then I say, no. And then she insists and says, but I asked you so nice to do it. And I say, well, if you ask me so nice to do it, I have a choice to say no. And then her voice gets even stronger. I asked you so nice to do it. And I says, I still have a choice to say no. They don't like it, yes? But no is the only thing that gives us freedom. If we lose our no, and we will see the disease is because we lose our no. Yeah? The yes is not going away, but the no is our problem. Yes, that's the human loss of control, because he loses his no. So here is the feelings. The body transmits it to the brain, and you need to know, oh, do I take out my hand of the fire or do I leave it there? Yeah. So only he who has a choice needs to feel and needs to say, how do I manage that? The nose needs to, does it smell? No, but it's nice to smell, is it? Yeah, when I got a cold the first time I got, I think in my younger years I also lost sometimes my smelling, but this time it was a little bit stronger. And when I started again to smell, I even liked the bad smell. You know that? You even like the bad smell, because when you don't smell, you don't taste, because we taste with the smell, and you eat, but you don't know what to eat. Yes, of course, you can put some spices and some more flavor. You don't need the flavor, just the salt. Yeah, you taste the salt, and you might taste the spices because they are strong, but you don't taste anything else. Yeah, just that what is on the tasting thing, but not on the smelling thing. Yeah, so it's a nice thing to smell. You know that, because you go somewhere and it's my assistant came into my room and said, I think you don't smell, because she has a very sensitive nose. When someone has a strong perfume, she needs to open all the windows because she's allergic to good perfumes. I mean, to strong perfumes, and some people really they bath in that perfume. I know. I mean, they come in and you have a hard time to breathe, and she is very sensitive to the perfumes, and when she see me not reacting, says, it looks like you don't smell. And it was true, but thank God he came back. So the tastes, they're all needed to go there, so because we need to take some decisions. That's why all our in and out comes, and we live in the soul, because here is the meeting of the body and the spirit. And the body does things that the spirit cannot do, and the spirit does things that the body cannot do. He cannot decide if he wants to see or not to see. So let's come together. The human nature has a clear structure. There is a spirit and a body that gives the soul. That is absolute, and nothing can change that. Function is determined by the spirit. The spirit controls and gives the main power to the body by the information he processes in his mind, in the way he thinks. That's why he needs love first, which is an information, and chemistry second. And if we have this clarity about the human structure, the human function, then we can go and see, okay, where does this function begin? So that's basic understanding that we learn. And now, to not make it too theoretical, we end with a case that was my first case where I saw how things work, and I always use this case because it's a very simple case. So here we have the spirit, the soul, and the body, and she comes to me, of course, with body injuries. Disease is always a body issue. Yes? No matter what is there, it's the body is affected. If I have headaches, if I have a stroke, if I have dementia, it's always the body who is sick. The spirit cannot be sick. He can just not function well if he does not have the right tools by which he needs to function. When we cut away our leg, we may not be able to walk, but that's why the spirit, even he's there, but the leg is gone, then we cannot walk. But the legs cannot walk, so we need both elements in order to walk. Now this lady has headaches for 2 weeks on both sides of her head, so her whole head is sick. That's why I paint here that is the chemistry that comes from the limbic system into the cortex, and we can even measure that in a functional MRI, where you can see that the lady has headaches. So she cannot lie to us. We can even prove it that she has headache, on the techniques that we have with markers and so on. So, but we believe that someone comes to us that he has headaches, even though we don't feel it, and we cannot, how can I say, measure it. It's there. So she has it for 2 weeks, and she goes to the doctor. The doctor prescribes her some anti-pain medication, but the medication doesn't work. And in the end, then she ends up in my practice after 2 weeks because the medication do not work. And the doctor sends her to me so that I look to her nose if she has a sinusitis there. I looked to her nose, but there was no sign of any infection. But she made a very her face was quite painful. So I thought maybe it is a head brain tumor or a bleeding in the brain, who knows. For 2 weeks, headaches, knowing my grandmother had those long-term headaches. So I went to a CT scan, and she came back the same day, the last patient in the evening. There was no injury, nothing that was visible on the x-rays. So she had no physical effect. We could rule out every other thing except her own way to think. So that's why I asked her what happened 2 weeks ago. And she told me 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend, she found out the boyfriend with whom she was living for 1 year now has been unfaithful. And the moment she hears the news, is that a good news or bad news? Yeah, so she hears the news. A few hours later, the headaches start and do not go away since then. Now, you're curious, I was curious, how does it work? Would you not be curious how it works? So, at the beginning, before she heard the news, how was her thoughts towards the boyfriend? Yes, they were loving thoughts, they were free thoughts, and when we have loving thoughts, we make the right electrical impulse. You can never have a wrong body function with free and loving thoughts. They make the right chemistry, the right hormones, they come back and they prove to you, this is good, think further like this. And as long as people are in love, you can make anything, but disease is apart from them. Yeah? So love is a great power. But then she hears the information regarding to the boyfriend. Is this information one that she needs? This information is an anti-need because she needs faithfulness, freedom, love, and now she hears that he is not faithful. So it's an anti-need. So how is her reaction? Her reaction is that she's disappointed, hurt, has thoughts of revenge, and these kind of thoughts make what kind of an impulse to the body? So that the body cries and says, stop this kind of way to think, because we want to be free. We want to function well. But does she understand the way that's what the body tells her? She cannot understand that because she is in a prison state. And what does she want? She's very simple. She wants to keep the boyfriend, but only if he is faithful. Can she control that? It's no, because where is faithfulness? In the physical or in the spiritual realm? Where is it? It's just in your mind if you're faithful or not. It's not in the physical. So that's why you can never control what another thinks or not. So she's in the prison. She wants to force her boyfriend to be faithful. Can she do that? Will she succeed? No. So why does she have headache? Why does the headache come? To help her or to destroy her? No, but why does the headache come? To help her stop the way to things, or she should do it further? The headaches come and say, please stop it. Does she understand it? No idea. Because she's focused on what? She's focused on what the boyfriend did, and now in that focus she is totally imprisoned, and she does not understand that her headache tells her, stop this way of thinking, like take your hand out of the fire. So she continues that way of thinking. Now, what convinced me that the way she thinks is not correct? Was it the way that she told me, or was it her headaches? So it's the headaches that said to me, because I would understand her, I would say, oh, this is normal thinking, is it? When someone did wrong to you, you feel hurt, and you justify yourself. But why do you get headache from it? Because no one punched her head. So I said, the headache must prove that she's not right. Because she makes it to herself. The pain proves that you're not right, if it's from your way of thinking. So that's why the question was, are her expectations justified? Does the boyfriend owe her faithfulness or not? I heard a yes, and I see some people shake the no. So does anyone owe you anything at any moment? Now, but why do we expect the other to do and owe it to us? Why? So, because there is that, what I tried to explain a little bit this morning, is a self-deception in the human being, that when others do the wrong, instead of you solving the problem lovingly, you destroy yourself. And now, the headaches may pass away for a while, but in 5 years or even less, if she doesn't change the way she thinks, she gets the breast cancer, and then maybe 5 years later she dies because she never changed the way she looks to that event. This is how chronic and terminal diseases arises, because you believe you have been hurt, you have been injured, and you remain in that thought of being the victim of the other one, and you don't realize that it's yourself who destroys you. And that's why the body helped me to see that this is the self-deception, and every case is the same case. Yes, everything goes fine until the information comes from the person you are in love or the person you are dependent. If that information is according to your needs, nothing happens, you feel good, you respond well. But if that information is not according to your needs, you go against it, and then you injure yourself. Smart or not smart? It's not smart that we are the one that destroy ourselves. That's why we need to know what is wrong. Why do we do this? Does this lady want to do that? Does she want to be angry? Or does she must to be angry? What does it? So she's in a prison. She does not want to think like that, but she must think like that because she believes for sure that he did wrong to her. But what generates that belief? Because it's not the truth. But she believes it is the truth. So, if we don't take the body as the result of what is there as a thought, as the result of our thinking, then we will always make some medications on our body, but never change the input of our thoughts. So, tomorrow we will see the subconscious, where this self-deception is, because it's not conscious to us. It only became conscious to me as I saw the cases, and if we understand then where the power comes in, where the problem is, then we can also solve it. But if I tell this lady, go home because your friend didn't injure you, would she believe me? She wouldn't say, oh, this doctor has no feelings or whatever, yes? But the truth is, can anyone hurt us or not? Spiritually. I mean, physically you can be hurt, but it's still you need to evaluate that as well, if it's personal or not personal. But in reality, there can no one hurt us, because no one owes us nothing. Yeah? No one needs to be faithful to us or not. But there is something in us that says, no, it's otherwise. We need that. The other person is subject to me and needs to fulfill my needs. But all those things are not the truth. And the disease of the body and the function of the body, and the law will prove it to us when we come to see the whole overview. Yeah. So this was a very fast going through 2 lectures. You have the little booklet, you have the presentations, you can study it for yourself, and tomorrow we will go into the subconscious when we are more fresh. It's not so hot tomorrow, maybe in the morning, and so we will. Thank you.